So as we know, Mike Vrabel is out, right, in Tennessee. That one to me was wild. For those that followed that, you guys followed it, right, Zach?
Yeah.
And Rocco, getting you back in. Do you see all that stuff with the owner going out, having a already pre-asked questions to answer? Have you ever kind of seen, actually out of curiosity, Rock, you ever kind of seen something like that as far as for you and in your media space? That's something they're taking your job from you, man.
I saw the interview, but I can't remember. It was with the team reporter. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That is correct.
Yeah. The team reporter, who's a team reporter employed by
the Tennessee Titans.
The team. They're not going to ask any of the, if you're in a situation like that, you're going to ask the questions and the right questions, but you're not going to basically berate who you're asking with the heavy, hard-hitting questions, because you are employed by them at the end of the day. And say what you want about that, but that's what they wanted to do. And I don't think it's the best look possible to have a team reporter interview the owner of the team and then put that out there on a social media space. I think a statement would have been just fine. No need to explain it further than that, and no need to dig yourself a deeper hole than you're already in. I think Mike Vrabel is a hell of a coach, and I don't think he's going to be unemployed for very long. I think one of these openings, or a future opening potentially down the line, he will be there and he will be in that seat going forward. But I think you could have definitely gone about it a different way. I don't like how they did it, but I'm not, it's the way they did it. So
bad process.
It wasn't
the move
great.
that they made, the AJ Brown deal. I still look back on that deal is, Vrabel can coach the guys who were there, and I'm sure, there was process in that, but you have the Tannehill extension, you have the AJ Brown trade, and Vrabel's shown that he's a guy that players go to war for. Like the speech we talked about it, him, losing sucks and all this and all that. That's a guy you want to play for. And I think this meeting is just like, well, now I have to if you're the owner, now I have to justify why I made this move that I know that not a lot of people agree with. And I don't think I've seen that before, where an owner sits down with the team. It's a scripted thing, right?
Yeah, it was very weird.
So
extremely weird.
If you're going out there in front of the media or getting asked those questions and not scripted, from outside sources, it's one thing. But to kind of have this pre-recorded video thing with the pre-recorded questions, it felt very weird to me. I don't know.
Yeah, it just felt like, not that they were hiding something, but it was like they knew what they did was not going to sit well with people. And so they were like, okay, we're just going to get out ahead of it.
Since we're on Vrabel here, why don't we hear from a player that used to play for Vrabel? Taylor Lewan now does Bussin' with the Boys. He gave his take immediately kind of after. He was actually on the Rich Eisen show when the news broke. But he gives his take on Mike Vrabel leaving, and I want you guys to take a listen. Here we go.
Eisen show, when I saw that Mike was fired from the Titans. And you can see the clip. It's on Rich Eisen's show, and it's truly like my reaction. That's when I found out it all went down, and like it sucks, because I think it's a mistake, and I have so much respect for Amy and the Titans franchise and the people up there, even though the people that are now upstairs I don't know very well. I have a lot of respect for them because I owe that to the Tennessee Titans. But that is, I think, a big mistake. I think Mike Vrabel, in my personal opinion, is the best coach I ever had in the NFL, which I don't have a huge sample size, but I know guys that came from the Titans, who came from other teams to the Titans. They would always talk about how Vrabes has really got it locked down, and he lets everybody understand the game. I've preached this from the high heavens, and we know this year, objectively looking at the Titans, it wasn't like a coach thing. It was you guys lacked talent in too many areas to truly be competitive. You have great players on there: DeAndre Hopkins, Derrick Henry, Jeffrey Simmons, like Kevin Byard until he was traded. And so like the problem was the overall roster. It just didn't make you competitive. That happens all the time. It's not a shot at anybody, but it's just truly the changing of a chapter in the Tennessee Titans franchise book. It's it'll never be the same again. I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing. It's just will no longer ever be the same again. But I think we need to all be very grateful to Mike Vrabel and what he's done for this franchise. Thank you, Mike.
So, actually, Kyle, kind of looks like Zach.
I see it. I take that as a compliment. Wow. I would love to look like Taylor Lewan.
Yeah,
It's a mustache. I'll give it to him. I like it.
yeah, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's all. And the athletic ability and probably size is.
You could block Myles Garrett. You could do it.
Yeah, if I get like 7 of me, and I can illegally chop block.
I'd still take Myles Garrett, but
I would too.
I think what you're hearing though is a former player going to bat for his coach, and for Mike Vrabel, I think the frustration was the last couple of years wasn't pretty, and quite frankly, there was a lot of frustrations on the offensive side. Right, the Tennessee Titans were having struggle scoring points, and yes, they had Derrick Henry, but Derrick Henry was getting older. He had a great year last year. Obviously, he's still one of the best backs. He still has a lot of miles on his tires, but that dude is a force. But the Titans, you just felt that relationship, Kevin. You mentioned it. Once A.J. Brown got traded, you just felt like their identity was being taken away. They didn't have the weapons.
Yeah.
But they battled it. I mean, hell, they almost went to the playoffs last year with Josh Dobbs in the final game in Jacksonville.
Oh, no. And it's crazy because their whole situation was, I mean, their offensive line has been awful for I don't even know how many years now. Skoronski was really good for him.
Yeah.
But other than that, they really haven't had a great offensive line, and Derrick Henry still just is a beast, and it doesn't really matter. But they go into the year with Tannehill as the starter, and you're kind of wondering with that Levis pick, who, by the way, I was not sold on when that pick happened. I've grown much more into a Will Levis guy. You put in a rookie quarterback there, and there are going to be some rookie struggles, and Tannehill gets injured, then he gets benched because Levis is playing well. It just felt like a roller coaster ride all season in Tennessee. And we saw Vrabel when he had the talent and was successful. He led Tennessee AFC Championship game. He came into Baltimore. He was the guy in 2019 that came into Baltimore and beat the Ravens. I don't think this is going to be a very long stay in unemployment for Mike Vrabel. I think head coaches all across the league, they kind of want to take some of Mike Vrabel's process of, this is the type of players coach that I want to be, because you could tell his players loved them. Guys who aren't even in the organization, like a Taylor Lewan, are screaming his praises. So we can talk about these player coaches and, all these young, innovative minds, and that's kind of the direction people want to go in. Guys like John Harbaugh and guys like Mike Vrabel, Mike Tomlin, those are really important coaches still in this league. And so I think a team's going to get I know there are rumblings, maybe the whole Belichick situation. Does Vrabel go back to New England and is he the coach there? So I think that it was a very unfair way to end things with Vrabel. I would have given him one more year. And I know that some fans will say, well, you're just dragging out the inevitable, and why just reset now? I mean, the fact that they were even considering trading him, and that was a conversation, meant that, he has value across the league. So I think that, I wouldn't have made this move. I think for me, Vrabel should have had at least one more year there, and we'll see how it impacts. Maybe it works out for him. I'm not saying Tennessee's going to be doomed for 50 years because they made this move, but I think it would have been better for them to keep him than to let him go.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the rest of the division, though, there's a change of the guard, right? You have Doug Peterson now as the veteran coach in that division, and he's only been there 3 years now.
Yeah, this is his third.
So the point we're kind of getting, I look at Mike Vrabel. If we're looking at coaches' stability, people like being around. I know people don't like to talk about the Steelers as well. But, I mean, I think John Harbaugh, obviously, it speaks for himself, the culture. I think Mike Tomlin's done that tremendous job. I think I'd put Mike Vrabel in that conversation of creating a culture. Guys love to play for him. And I don't think he's going to be out of a job for a long time.
No, that's what I was getting at. He's a player's coach. The players absolutely love him. And you hear Taylor Lewan, who had his ups and downs with the franchise, basically say, I think this is a bad decision. And, he said he loves Amy, the owner, but this could be a bad decision at the end of the day for the Tennessee Titans. I think Mike Vrabel is a great – it's hard to come by guys that can create a culture like that in the locker room and that have also played the game at such a high level and helped their team get wins on the biggest stages. So for Mike Vrabel, he's been there, done that, and he's done a pretty solid job with the Titans with what the cards he's been dealt. I mean, no one expected A.J. Brown to get dished on, when was it, draft night a few years ago?
Yeah, and by his reaction, he did not either. I
yeah,
mean,
exactly.
that famous
A.J.
video
Brown
of
to
him.
go, and then Derrick Henry's on his way out now with that farewell, his conversation that he had. So it seems like the end of an era in Tennessee. One of the Titans fans I know down there, I used to work with him, and he literally said it. He sent me the video of Derrick Henry. He's like, end of an era. I don't know if he meant that with Mike Vrabel as well, but things are changing in Tennessee. I don't know Mike Vrabel, I could see him being a head coach at a team that he's played for in the past. So I think we've talked about this on the show before.
Yeah.
I do want to say something before we move on. The
Please.
reporter that Amy did the interview with, that's Mike Keith, because I was watching her the whole time and watching what she had to say. Mike Keith does a phenomenal job. I've talked to him a few times. He's their play-by-play guy, and he's a legend. So he's not just any ordinary team reporter down there, but a situation that you're put in to have to do that, and where it's not an open space for everyone to ask her questions, it's got to be, a little weird, but that guy's just doing his job at the end of the day.
I don't think anybody's looking at on that standpoint, right? I think all of us are looking at that it was just all pre-recorded. She probably knew what questions were going. It was just a weird dynamic. Yeah. I think that was it. It was, you gave an answer, another answer, and it just, not going to say it didn't feel authentic. It just felt very scripted. And for fans, that's not something that you wanted after the season.
For someone, Rip, that probably doesn't do a whole lot of media. Obviously, she's prepped, but
yeah.
How many times does Steve Bisciotti do a press conference during the season? Not too many times, but when he talks, he's ready to talk. It's like, but when you're going to go into an interview like that, you probably know what questions are going to be asked. And that's not a knock on Mike Keith, and it's not a knock on Amy either. It's just like, that is the way that this kind of works when it comes to something like that. So I would have loved to have seen kind of an open forum, all of the local media. And I don't know if they did that or they plan on doing that, but all the local media gets to kind of ask her the questions, like their own questions, ones that aren't necessarily pre-scripted. Like, what's the deal here? Why'd this happen? Why are you guys moving on from Vrabel?
Yeah. I do think we have to have the conversation of how badly the Tennessee Titans, and I'm not going to say it's solely the owner, but that's the name that's been kind of getting a lot of the, attached to these stories, but how the Tennessee Titans botched the end of this era in Tennessee, because you had supposedly it was very close. It looked like the Ravens and the Titans had a deal potentially to trade Derrick Henry, gets vetoed by people above the general manager, people assuming would be the owner. So that's what's out there originally is, no, they want to keep Derrick Henry. So now you're losing him for nothing. You'll get a comp pick most likely, but for the most part, you're not getting much for Henry. And then, there were all these rumors. Can Vrabel be traded? What does Vrabel do? And then you have this very awkward parting, and then the very weird press conference after. And it just feels like just the way it ended is not what those two, after all they did, truly deserved. And it might all work out. Maybe they get an offensive mind in there with Levis and everything, and they do take off, and that would be awesome. But it did kind of stink to see that those two, after all they did, kind of had to, not ride off into the sunset as, the guys they're supposed to. Henry got that a little bit after that great game, and he got to sit there. But I do wish Vrabel would have, kind of like Taylor Lewan was saying, like, gotten a little bit better of a send-off than the way he did.
Yeah. He definitely changed the perception of what the Tennessee Titans were and embodied. I will say the other part, the question that rattled me, and we'll move on though, was saying, who is the new coach or GM going to report to?
Right.
And that was a part there that I'm sitting there going, what the hell is that? Like, because that's
how do you know that
well,
right now?
well, and that's I guess my point. And I understand I don't even know if a reporter would ask that off the bat. Maybe they would down the stretch. I think they would ask that question after someone was hired, but off the bat, hey, this next person you hire, are they going to report to you, or who has control? And that was just a very, like I said, it was just a very unorthodox interview, but it's all a part of it.